It's your boy Diablos here again, here with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We got the usual suspects. We got Anthony or Spigs18. We have Dean or Alpha Dean. And join us today, we have Steven, our illustrious golden one, or one of them, I should say. And, Dean, what are we here for today?
Well, we were supposed to be here for some GM roulette, but technical difficulties, time, and everything has gotten away from us. So we're going to come back and we're going to hit you with another episode in our series of What Grinds Our Gears. And today we're going to talk about the social dynamics and, those social interaction points of what grinds our gears in the gaming community and industry. So without further ado, Anthony, start us off.
All right, so I'm starting us off. Ooh, mine is actually pretty easy. We decided beforehand to talk about social interaction and gaming, and what's really been bothering me lately, just visiting a lot of message boards on the CU, Twitter, and various different outlets, is gatekeeping. Like, I really don't see the need. It only hurts the hobby to have someone be told that just because they're not experienced or they haven't been gaming enough, that their points and their opinions on any discussion about gaming isn't valid. I don't see how that in any way can help the hobby grow. And the whole point of gaming is to get new players in. So, I understand you want to keep this sacred cow that is, gaming, that you want to be able to, the billionaire boys club, but the hobby is going to die that way. This whole concept of, oh, hey, I've been gaming 30 years, I've been gaming 40 years, I've been gaming since, chainmail, is supposed to make newer players feel welcome is ridiculous. And I just get so tired of watching videos or seeing people on Twitter talking about how inclusivity is a bad thing for gaming.
But I'm going to chime in on that one, Anthony, because that's such a good point. Here's a guy, and I did not keep his Twitter quote, but his name on Twitter is Mephistus_skunk. And basically he put a whole thing up about gatekeeping to keep women out of the hobby because they ruin the fun for everyone else.
First off, we shouldn't even said his name because he's not worth our time or breath.
Well, no, I want people to know his name so they can avoid him. That's the whole point. Avoid the jerk. That's just some of the most idiotic crap I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it was literally, and he actually dubs himself an anti-feminist.
His whole concept is that women can't play games. What kind of idiotic concept is that?
His whole concept is that women don't add enjoyment to the game because they require too many special treatments or too many changes to the game in order for the game to be fun anymore.
Players have been women.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so silly because again, as I'm sure everyone here and everyone who's watching knows, most of the time, women or whoever have you, female people, they
female people,
whenever they play games or whenever they're involved in your game, they're always one of the best players at the table. Because most of the time, I'm not trying to generalize or anything, but a lot of male people will try to be more combat focused or mechanic focused or whatever have you, whereas most of the time, again, I hate to make generalizations, but the women focus on the storytelling aspect, the role playing aspect.
They just bring another level and aspect to the game.
And it's always a breath there.
I mean, for me, I think that what I get the most out of gaming, and I get the most out of a gaming session, is fresh perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I think it's idiotic and it makes zero sense that if you're running a game and you want to tell a story that's fresh that you haven't told before, it's best to have people from different races, different
ethnicities,
because they all they're gonna bring something different to the table, right? If I wanted to tell the same story over and over again, I'm gonna play with 5 clones of myself. I don't want that. I want a different perspective, because it makes it enjoyable as a player, it makes it enjoyable as a GM. You want the story to evolve organically from different points of view.
And here's
As
another
much as we
thing.
do want more clones of Anthony.
But
I'm working on it.
and I'm going to second that motion in the sense of this too. There's an authenticity to having a woman at the table play a woman. It's such a nice thing sometimes. I mean, not to say that, because it is a role playing game and, as a GM, I got to do female characters and so on and so forth. But it's so nice sometimes just to have that perspective at the table, just to have those different views. I love playing with, like Anthony said, the gamut. One of my best friends, happens to be, member of the LGBTQ, community, and he brings awesome aspects to the game. My wife, she brings awesome aspects to every game I sit down at. Even playing with the kids sometimes. I mean, best adventure of Gen Con will go down in history and infamy so far was the one with the 4-year-old and the 6-year-old sisters.
Just to speak on that too, that if I hear another, they bringing a gay agenda to get. That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. They are a human being that plays a game. There's no one's waking up in the morning and saying, "Hey, I'm bringing the minority agenda, the gay agenda to the
At the table, the agenda is to have fun.
Yeah,
What
exactly,
the?
exactly.
Exactly.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, who,
Like,
yeah, and if you have someone like in that mindset, you're not really coming to a game to say, "Hey, I want to push any agenda." Really, people just want to have fun. Like, you should think
Right.
anyone has an agenda. Like,
The only, like, I'm with Steven, the only agenda is the fun at the table. That's it. You know.
yeah, I don't literally, it may sound like a cliche, but I don't care who you are. When as long as you're willing to tell a fun story with me and you're willing to laugh and have a good time, that's all that really matters. And that should be the only thing that matters for everyone at the table. And maybe I'm naive, but I just think it's so idiotic. Like I don't understand. I literally do not understand why this is even an issue.
all
Well, you
right.
know what,
Oh,
Anthony? I think I'm gonna close up your question on this note, and I know it really sounds crazy, but it's all of these people who feel like their relevancy is being challenged or questioned. And I think that's just what it boils down to. It's not for us to understand, but it is for us to keep it off the table. So that's where I'm at. Al, what you got for us?
but what Anthony was just saying was a really good segue into what my thing is. He was saying about people working together to tell a story at the table, which is really what it all comes down to. What people actually care about, and that brings me to my topic, which is what grinds my gears, which is that GM versus player mentality, where a GM comes to the table thinking, "Hey, I have to make these guys' life as hard as I can. I'm out to kill them any way I can. Hope that I'm gonna set up encounters and dungeons that are specifically designed to, if they make one mistake, they're gonna die." Like, and then again, that mindset brings, like, you're here to tell a story, not have a, like, if you want to play a PvP game, like play a video game or something, like you're here to advance a wonderful and interesting story with your players, not threaten the lives of these characters they put so much love and like attention into making. Because I know when I make characters, I almost always fall in love with them. Like, I really end up loving the characters I play, even if it's for one shot. I never revisit the character. There's always a little piece of me that remembers a little bit about them. And again, that mindset, it seems so archaic at this point. Like, um, it brings nothing of value to the table. And yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
I,
right in
I
my
remember
field.
when I first got into the hobby, there were years later, meeting other GMs for the first time, get out of my hometown into college or whatnot. And then there were other GMs who bragged about, how horrible they made players' lives. And I'm just like, that's just not fun. Even back then, I still have this, I think I still have this table rule. I don't always express it because how often I do not like killing my players. I like seeing what epics they come up with on the shenanigans that happen, because that's much more interesting than to be like you walk 2 steps and you die. Um, or the Tarrasque just hatched out of your bedroom and devoured everyone. No, but I always did the option of, hey, if a player dies, I say, do you want to re-roll a character, or do you want me to make life complicated and bring them back in some way?
Well,
And a lot, and it was a 50-50 shot. People had to, either they want to try something new or they want to have fun to see what situation do we get into now.
I will say this though, like as someone who's gamed in like AD&D era, second edition. When I first started playing, that was sort of the norm,
Mm-hmm.
and as a player, it was kind of refreshing when someone wasn't GMing like that. But like a lot of the early modules, a lot of like Tomb of Horrors and stuff like that, it was yeah, it was basically the DM was out there to ensure that you wasn't going to survive, and I think that kind of goes along with the gatekeeping because a lot of early games were run that way, and sadly, a lot of players can't break that mindset. And I think that with the like the influx of new gamers and the influx of streaming, where telling a story is more important than necessarily playing a tactical fighty, stabby game. I think that changed a lot of the newer players' perspective when they think of games. Now they think of, hey, we're gonna tell this epic narrative together as a group. But when I first started as a 14-year-old me, you know, I sat at the table like, oh, scared that am I going to survive this game, or is my character? I mean, my first GM literally ripped your character sheet in front of you.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Like,
I mean, well,
like
you look
you
back then,
heard the
and
sound of the paper.
some games were really honest about what was going to happen. You
well,
play Dark Sun, and in the player's book, it says make 2 characters, possibly 3.
well, here's the deal. This is coming from a guy who basically was here at the inception. 1977. The game was only 3 years old when I started playing. And I remember those days. I remember that it was played like a typical game. It was a competition, just like a board game or anything else. There was winning and losing, and it initially brought that mindset. But you got to remember, RPGs came from what?
War
War
game.
games, fantasy war. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even fantasy war games. It was war game reenactments. And Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson got the brilliant idea to bring a fantasy story element into it. So thank God, that we did evolve. And I mean, I know myself, I know that evolution came kind of early on because I was intrigued by character development. I was intrigued by story element. So, I broke that mold and thank God I was able to do it early on. I did it, probably by the time, you know, probably by the time the early 80s hit, like 81, 82. And it actually wasn't D&D that convinced me to do it. It was finding a superhero role-playing game. I found villains and vigilantes. And that didn't work. Why do you don't kill the superheroes. Superheroes don't die. So if you did kill them off, you had to come up with some weird, twisted way to bring them back to life anyway, because superheroes always come back. So, it's kind of switched my thought process. So, but
But
I get it. Yeah, no fun with it.
Shameless plug. We'll be interviewing Jeff D for the creator of Villains and Vigilantes in a couple of weeks.
but
Shameless plug.
shameless plug aside, I have a funny story about this whole GM versus player talk. So actually, it used to be my mindset going into these you know D&D games. Actually, the ones that Anthony ran, right? So
I didn't get to kill you.
that was basically my first foray into playing role playing games. Was playing D&D with Anthony and our friends, and just based off I guess stereotypes or I guess what I've seen in media, I just kind of assumed it was like the GM putting up challenges for us to defeat, fighting or whatever have you. And one funny story about this that happened, that really displayed that mindset to me that I it kind of messed me up a little bit was we were I forget exploring we were exploring someplace and we came to some village, and it was like I forget, it was kind of like a dilapidated village. It wasn't in the best of shape, and I think there were like lizard people or something. I forget exactly what they were.
Oh
You
yeah,
remember what I'm talking about?
yeah, yeah.
And immediately we just start fighting them. We don't really try to talk to them. We just start attacking them. Like
They were kobolds, and they were like an innocent village.
yeah,
And
and we just
explored the village.
and we basically killed a bunch of them, but enough
Yeah.
of them survived. Like we kept one or two of them alive. I forget,
Yeah.
like as a part of just to get information. And it turns out they were friendly, and they actually worshiped the same god as me, my paladin. And it was a major goof up. Like we could have just talked to them instead of just. And that was a really big that's a really big memory I have of that whole GM versus player mindset, how strong it can be. And when I came across Cypher system, that whole thing melted away. Like quite literally. Like I was like, oh my god, this lets you tell a story together without worrying about all the fighting. Like holy shit. Like and yeah, I think Anthony could tell you those really big shift in my mindset when we discovered Cypher system. And yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Steven, so what you got for us today?
What do I got? Honestly, this applies to all areas of life, but I think particularly around the table is people can't say anything good about other people, and it's not always, it's not necessarily always that they say the bad things directly. I mean, people skills is something you need at a table, especially if you're the GM. I mean, players need it, but the GM needs to know how to deal with people. The GM has to know that they, balance it all out. It's like you should not be judging anybody. Everyone's at the same level in your thought. It's just about the story. Don't judge your players. Now there's some really difficult players out there, but you have to stay neutral. It's it's all about harmony at the table. I just use the example as I had. I'm not gonna go into the whole long story, but I had a really bad roommate situation before where it was me and two other guys. One of the other guys would talk to only me about how much he hated the other guy, and I wouldn't say anything bad about either of them. I was just like, you know what? I'm not starting a fire under my own roof. Don't start a fire on your table. And honestly, it's not even necessary that you're saying bad things. You're not outwardly calling somebody a jerk. It's not just that you're not calling them. I'm sure everybody has really colorful words for the things that you like to call some people. You know what?
Dean's favorite word, ass goblin.
But
that guy right there. Anyway, is compliment people. You should go. It's not that you stay neutral. You should compliment people. Bring out the best in them. Let them know that they are valued, that they are part of your table. Outside the table, that they're part of your life. If you can't say a compliment about somebody, to me, it's people start noticing that you can't say anything good about anybody, and it's just as bad as saying bad things about people. Because they start noticing that you, as that type of person that can't give a compliment, you're only thinking about yourself. And it does come off like that.
And I'm going to jump right in on that note, Stephen, because I won't even say it's even about giving a compliment, or that. It's the self-centeredness that bugs me.
Yep, that's what I was getting into.
Yeah, it's that self-centeredness. It's those people who it's all about me. Mm-hmm. I'm the center of the world, and we deal with it on a regular basis, where you get the guy, I've heard, individuals call their players idiots. I've heard individuals, someone else is, working on something or whatever the case may be, and they won't even, come to this person's aid. The person will ask a question and they'll turn it into something about themselves. So, yeah, I get it. Be nice, and sometimes let somebody else have the spotlight.
Mm-hmm. Be nice goes a long way. It's like
It
you said.
just on all levels. Like if you're the guy that's always rolling ones, don't get glum about it. Laugh about it.
Yeah.
And when the other guy's rolling 20s, be happy for that guy because he's saving your party.
And when someone that doesn't necessarily know how to play asks a question or finally does something, that is like for the game, moving the story forward. Encourage them, compliment them, say, hey, like that was a good idea. Listen to the players. And if you're a player, listen to your other players. Like just because someone's new, you don't have to look down on them because you know more. It's just be nice. Don't be a jerk.
Just remember that at one point in time, you were the newbie.
Yep.
Exactly. And let me piggyback on that by saying that if you act like a instead of complimenting people's decisions or whatever have you, or getting on their case, like if you would do the opposite of getting on their by getting on their case for their questions or their decisions or whatever have you, you become known as that guy, capital T, capital G, and you kind of instill insecurity in these players, like I don't want to play around this guy because I feel like I'm gonna be judged for my question I might have or the decision I might make in the future. Like no one wants to really play around that. Like it just makes it uncomfortable.
And I've seen this happen multiple times too, is if you're still not conducting yourself with that amount of integrity outside the table, especially around the same people who are at the table, it ruins the experience at the table.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say this too, to go aside with what both of you guys just said. As a GM, right? If you're the GM and you notice someone is just not being the nicest of people, or is being aggressive and demeaning to other people, call it out. Don't call it out while it happens.
Right there at the table.
There's too many games that start off well, and it's one person will ruin the experience for the entire group. You as the GM, you have to handle those situations. I know it's difficult, and I know a lot of people don't like confrontation, but sometimes a little confrontation will solve the problem. And if you're a player and you have an issue with the other players and everyone seems to be having fun but you, recognize that and excuse yourself. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, maybe I don't mess with you.
Table for me.
This isn't the table for me. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, guys, I appreciate, thank you for the offer. It was fun, but I don't think this is the best group for me. Yeah, once again, it leads to people not wanting confrontation, but sometimes those confrontations is better for the whole group as a whole.
And I'll caveat on that, or should I say piggyback on what you're saying, Anthony. That's so true. That sometimes you have to do that. I've done that as a GM, and I've done it as a player, and more so, I've encountered a few people in my lifetime in all the years of gaming. One of my best buds, his wife, always wanted the game, always wanted to try the hobby, but was always kept on the outside. More of that same silliness we were just talking about earlier. Well, because she's a girl, she couldn't do anything with this, couldn't have any fun with this. And I have to say, this friend of mine, his wife ran one of the best adventures I have ever, as a player, ever been in. I mean, as a GM, I was a little envious. I never thought of it, I mean, I was actually inspired, and mind you, she hadn't been doing this hobby the way we have, I mean, she only had maybe 5 years of experience, and she came with one of the best adventures ever, I mean, and I'm not going to go all into great detail, but just to think that, everybody made these cool characters like Al was talking about. You make these characters, you're invested, and your characters wake up in chains. All your gear and equipment is somewhere else, and this great adventure unfolds from there. It was great. So, yes, be nice. You never know what resource you have at your disposal. So
we got a personal mission. Next game, we have to be nice to somebody tomorrow and see you.
okay,
I will make
I'll
it a
be
point
nice.
to be
I'm not.
nice.
I'm nice all the time. I'm sweet as sugar.
I'm
Same,
nice. Look, I'm nice, and I don't call people ass goblins unless they deserve it. You know.
Well, on that topic, Dean, what grinds your gears?
Being nice.
No, you know what?
Someone telling me I gotta be nice.
I hate when
I'm the-
people are nice.
I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. The thing that grinds my gears the most are people who blatantly rip off people or try to do underhanded stuff to take their ideas and make them their own. You know, this industry is growing. This industry is blossoming. So there's lots of stuff out there. There's lots of inspirations. There's lots of, things out there that, what we might think we're good at or we like. And that's wonderful. But you know what? Don't steal another person's stuff. Don't blatantly steal their things. I'm not saying don't be inspired, because guess what? I'm inspired every single day. There's great stuff out there. I mean, my friend here, Steven, has his game Pantheon. Trust me, Bug Hunt is great. It's fun. It's inspirational. But Pantheon is probably some of the best stuff out there as far as meaty story, and I told him we discussed it. We talked about it. I helped him, develop some concepts and ideas. And I told him it was very inspirational. I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I know I'm not going to be mad, nor am I going to steal his stuff, his concept, and try to make it my own. I'm not going to do underhanded stuff like, hey, Steven, let's talk. Show me some more of your stuff, and then try to adapt his ideas and call them my own or put something out before he does. And I've seen people do it, and it really, really, that's where the ass goblinry and the smart mouth of mine comes out. That's when I want to, that's just me.
I mean, there's a fine line between admiration and plagiarism. And I could see, as someone who doesn't do much design work, like I don't necessarily I wouldn't know unless someone, unless it was a designer that I'm currently following or is a close friend of mine, because I happen to have quite a few friend designers. But that I would know that, oh, hey, this is similar to Steven's idea or whatever. But there's also copying of game styles, and we see a lot of people posting games. We see a lot of people running games, especially now that we really looking into the Twitch live stream, and I see it happen all the time where there's somebody really popular or has a stream with a certain concept, and then 2 months later there's like 4 carbon copies of that same idea on Twitch or YouTube. So I definitely see, I definitely see, just copying someone. It's no bueno, man. It's just a jerk move.
Why would you want to undercut somebody?
And it only dilutes the idea for both people.
Yeah, you're right. It does. It does dilute the idea. And I think that's probably why it bugs me so much. I mean, we know us here at the CU. We've met quite the plethora of people who are very talented and very imaginative, and who come up with awesome ideas and things like that. And yeah, I find it frustrating when I see someone, just blatantly, snatch something up. It's like, it's just like the whole thing going on with Star Trek Discovery right now. That whole lawsuit, I mean, you can go on Steam and find the blue tardigrade and the blonde-haired gay botanist and the redhead chick, and and they all fall in the same similar roles as all these characters on Star Trek Discovery. But CBS is saying, "Oh no, we didn't take his stuff." but it's the same thing. I mean, the tardigrade literally travels through time and space, and that's what they do on the TV show. It's like, wow.
Well,
Well, because they got so much money, they can fight against it.
Us as the CU, we do not condone or state that Star Trek is plagiarizing anyone just for legal purposes.
But anyways, let me interject.
Oh yeah, that's true. We're not saying it.
All that said, though, it's okay to take inspiration from sources. Like, let's say, just for examples purposes or sake, whatever have you. Let's say, because it is something I have thought about. Let's say I put out something like I want to make a magical girl setting, right? And I know for a fact, and everyone else will probably agree with me, that the unmasked mechanic will work perfectly for it. You're a teen person, and then you transform, and instead of transforming into a superhero, you transform into a magical girl, right?
Right.
So I'm not gonna put out a magical girl supplement that uses those rules and not say anything about unmasked. I'm gonna say, hey, I'm using the unmasked, that whole mechanic or whatever have you, and I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. Like, hey, this is just basically a reskin of the unmasked mechanics. I'm not gonna push it forward and say, hey, this is my original idea. Like, I came up with magical girls. Like,
Right.
it's always gonna be like, hey, I drew inspiration from that. And again, it is more about giving credit again where credit's due.
Yeah.
And
you're totally right. Like, if you are writing something that it's inspired by another creator, it doesn't hurt to say, to put a note in there to say, hey, look at their other work.
Exactly.
They have a supplement that I bought, I know this guy, I talked to him.
But let me ask you guys as creatives, right? Say you start working on something and, you put 6-7 months in and you have this idea, you a third of it written, and then you show it to me and I go, oh hey, this looks an awful lot like mouse guard. Right, like down to like look, your setting is almost 80% identical. Ethically, wouldn't you be like, hey, I got to scrap this?
Yes.
Like even if you wasn't aware of it at the time. I'm not saying you would, but just ethically, if you saw this is way too close to someone else's IP. It's like, when ethically you have to be like, hey, I have to scrap this and start with something new.
Absolutely.
You want to go?
I was like, either you scrap it, or you have to rethink about what can I change majorly in the setting or rule set, depending on what it is that you're doing, to set it apart from everything else.
Right, and that basically
it's going to be a genre shift, which changes your whole thought process and how everything works. But you have some time. You're going to have some time on ethically. You got to spend the time to differentiate it from whatever other item is too similar.
It's the old Transformers GoBots argument.
If someone comes with a nice kobold, like you.
I can actually say that on a very, very personal level. It had to be around 90. Had to be around 94, 95. I started working on this whole thing, and it was, martial artists throwing elements, fireballs and all this kind of stuff. And I piddled and I didn't work. I didn't do it fast enough. Then guess what? In the 2000s, the kids sit me down and watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's like, oh, man. Well, they beat me to the punch, and I'm not saying that they didn't have it first or who had it first. I don't know. But the reality was, guess what? This was a whole concept that had to kind of be scrapped, or that wasn't even scrapped. I took all the work I did and I reworked it. And, elements of it have made it into other things. But it is an ethical conundrum, but it's not even a conundrum. It's just literally, are you going to be a jerk and try to market the same thing that's already out there?
I mean, I even do that with one-shots. I take, you guys all know I take pride in doing original and different types of one-shots that most people don't tend to tackle. But if I come up with a concept and I might throw, because I tend to you three guys, I tend to bounce ideas off your guys all the time. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. If someone posts something that's even remotely similar to the idea, I'm not going to do it.
Well, I gave you the example between me and you, Anthony. I had told Steven, I want to choke Anthony. God bless him. But what made it cool was I wanted to choke you, but then it was like, why am I getting upset? Anthony loves kung fu movies just like I do. He loves wuxia. And what did you do? You were like, hey man, I know you're working on those wuxia flavors. Can I test them for you? I'm like,
yeah. Not for nothing. Burning Red Lotus Temple was kick ass. I'm proud of that.
That's what I'm saying. It turned out you tested my stuff. The feedback that I got from you and your players was phenomenal. It inspired. I was able to come up with more stuff. Now everything is kind of coming together, and it's a shameless plug. It's coming to a theater near you, or should I say, tabletop gaming place. There will be a genre mashup of a noir wuxia setting from yours truly. Yes, that's coming. But Anthony,
I want to get my side of that conversation, just kind of loop back on what we were saying about, when I was saying about people who can't be nice and say something good about people. Even Anthony knew this, that Dean had been working on these wuxia flavors, all his kung fu stuff. He launched his game, and then when Dean did message me, I remember he said, "Oh man, Anthony beat me to it." And my first question to him was, I could see I was a bit disappointed. I was like, "Oh man, I hope it doesn't. Are you doing all right? Does it hurt?" He's like, "No." He said, "Anthony's great. I know he's not doing this for anything against me. I just wish I would have gotten it first." That was it. He said he wanted to choke Anthony. Maybe he did, but he didn't.
He tells me he wants to choke me like 5-6 times a week.
What's that?
I said, D tells me he wants to choke me like 5-6 times a week. It's all good.
That's a term of endearment.
No, I actually looked at it in a different route. Like, I was doing it to get him to get on board with the it was more of a motivation tactic.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
And like, it worked. Dude, that's exactly how he treated it too.
Yeah, like, dude, I need these foci done because I'm running this. You know what I mean?
And it worked. I mean, you accomplished what you wanted to. Like I said, it was just, again, it wasn't nothing to be upset about. I'm like, no,
I didn't take it that way at all.
No, that's what I'm saying. I was just like, damn it, he beat me to it, because I'm working on it. I'm like, I can't wait. I'm going to do this great adventure. And then you do Red Lotus Temple, and it's like.
And you know what it is too. I feel like the four of us in particular, we have totally different styles of games anyway. Like if like I tend to run a little bit more on the humorous side when it comes to my games, and I'm sure if the three of your guys ran the same exact genre, we're gonna tackle it from different angles. Because I tend to tackle serious topics with a little bit more of a humor tip, a humor angle.
You know what? That should be something we do, guys. Let's all let's pick one concept, and we all run our own version of it.
Yep, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? That would be cool.
But
we'll have to see if CU's prepared for this one.
But yeah, as Anthony is more of the on the serious side, I'm more of a comedy or gonzo action or whatever have you. My games are almost never quite fully serious. I'm sure I'll have a serious moment here or there, but yeah, I'm sure we can make
your predation, man. Man's Best Foe is hands down one of the best adventures I've ever played in.
That's a super fun one. But yeah, I think we very well discussed our gear grindings. Unless there's any more you wanted to add on that last bit there.
Nah.
No, except that if you get us upset, Dean's gonna go choke you.
But
got pretty big hands, people.
No. He only chokes ass goblins.
But thank you all for watching. We would be nothing without you all. And be sure to like, share, subscribe the video, to the video, to our channel, whatever have you. And yeah, hopefully this was a nice little insight into our little, what bothers us and what kind of sends us off.
Yep.
And
Be
yeah,
nice. Don't steal. Don't gatekeep. What was
and
the other one?
don't worry about beating each
No
other in
GM versus
RPG.
player.
Just try
Yeah.
to tell a
The
story.
GM is your friend. The players are your friend.
Everybody's friends at the table. Have a good time.
No TPKs. You know.
And but yeah, so I guess that's it. Thank you all for watching. Again, from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Adios.
Adios, people.